Hello and welcome to Nullitaire Gaming, where we play games with 0 players. In other words, we play bots against one another. Right now we're playing Root with the Clockwork expansion. We're putting all of the bots from this expansion up against each other. We've played the first round, I should say. Every bot has had one turn so far. And we're going to continue with the game. If you haven't seen the first 2 episodes of this series, I recommend those first. I will put a link to the full playthrough in the description. In the first episode, I talk about the bots and the various ambiguities that need to be resolved in order to play the bots efficiently and effectively. And in the second video, we play the first turn, or the first round. Okay, it's time to continue on with our game. Okay, here's the state of the board, once again, at the start of round number 2. The Vagabond is ahead right now with 4 victory points. All other factions have 2 victory points. And it's the Marquise's turn. Remember, we're going around the board this direction. In this video and in subsequent videos, I plan to go a bit faster. In the first round, I took it slow and went through the priorities very carefully. But now that we got the hang of that, I'm going to go a bit faster. So in the Marquise's turn, the order card is a rabbit, and it does have a craftable item, which was available. So the Marquise crafted that item and scored 1 victory point. And now it's daylight. The order card is a rabbit. So first, the Marquise is going to battle in each rabbit clearing. The only rabbit clearing where the Marquise can battle is 3, and there are 2 different factions there. So the tiebreaker is the player with the most pieces. Well, that's tied. And then it's the player with the most victory points. So that's going to be the Vagabond. So Marquise is going to battle the Vagabond in clearing 3. The roll is a 2-1, but of course the Marquise can only do 1 because there's only 1 warrior there. The Vagabot can do 2 hits right now. This is battle track, so it can do 1 hit. So the Marquise is going to lose its warrior there, and the Vagabot is going to have to damage an item. Okay, that's the end of battle. Next is Recruit. Because the Marquise only rules 2 clearings that are rabbit, they put 2 warriors each into clearings 5 and 10. Next is Build. Because it's a rabbit order card, the Marquise builds a workshop. In the clearing with the most Marquise warriors, well, clearings 2, 5, and 10 were all tied with 3 each. And among those, the only clearing that had room for a building was 5. So that workshop went into clearing 5. Next up is Move. However, there are no clearings with more than 3 Marquise warriors, so there'll be no movement. But now we need to consider Blitz. After your move, remember I interpret this to mean after the move step, not after some movement happened, so this will happen. Find the clearing you rule of highest priority with no enemy pieces and move all but 1 warrior from that clearing, then battle in the destination clearing. Well, the clearing of highest priority with no enemy pieces is not 1, because there's enemy pieces there, but 2. No enemy pieces there. So they're going to move all but 1 warrior from clearing 2 to an adjacent clearing. And again, my interpretation of that is they will always move to a clearing with enemy pieces, but there are no such clearings with enemy pieces. So they'll simply move to the highest priority, which will be 5. So they will move 2 warriors from 2 to 5. And that'll be the end of the Blitz. Expand is next, but they did build a building this turn, so that won't happen. So we move on to Evening. Score victory points from the rabbit track, which is 1. So the Marquise will score 1 point, and that will be the end of their turn. Automated Alliance is up next. Their order card is a bird card. There is no craftable item on it. So they won't revolt because it's a bird card. They'll do a surprise revolt later. So they'll move to Public Pity. And they do have 4 or fewer sympathy tokens on the board, so they're going to spread sympathy twice. For the first spread sympathy, they place sympathy in clearing 6. It's adjacent to a sympathetic clearing. And because it's a bird order card, that's wild, so any clearing suit will match it. And so they chose the clearing with the fewest warriors, which obviously is 6 with 0 warriors. And now they're going to spread sympathy once again. They spread sympathy again into clearing 8. So it is adjacent to clearing 7, which is sympathetic. Both clearing 8 and clearing 2 were tied for most warriors, but they obviously, the Alliance obviously can't place sympathy in clearing 2 because the keep is there. Only the Marquis can place pieces in that space. So they went with clearing 8. Okay, and they scored a total of 3 victory points for those 2 sympathy, for placing those 2 sympathy markers, so they are now up at 5. Okay, public pity is done, so we move on to daylight, and lo and behold, spread sympathy once again. This time they spread sympathy into clearing 11 with 2 warriors. Again, they can't play sympathy in clearing 2, even though it has fewer warriors because of the keep. So clearing 11 is the space now that's adjacent to sympathy and has the fewest warriors. Okay, and they score 2 victory points for this one, so they're now up to 7. Now it's time for the surprise revolt. So they're going to choose the sympathetic clearing with the most enemy pieces. And that's going to be clearing 1, which has 3 enemy pieces. All the other sympathetic clearings have fewer than that. Okay, so it's going to be a fox revolt in clearing 1. So all the enemies were cleared out of clearing 1, and a fox base is placed there. On evening, organize. There are no bases with 3 or more warriors, so skip that. Recruit, place a warrior at each clearing with a base. So clearing 1 gets a base. And now discard the order card, but we have to remember Wildfire at the end of the evening. Spread sympathy once more, but don't score for placing this token. That sympathy token went into clearing 4. There were 2 spaces tied for fewest warriors at 3 each, clearing 10 and clearing 4. So they went with the higher priority, which is clearing 4. Again, they do not score victory points for this sympathy. Vagabot's turn now. The order card is a fox. It does not have a craftable item, so we'll skip that. And Vagabot will not slip into a forest. So we'll move on to daylight. Since it's a fox card, we're going to explore first. So Vagabot will move to the nearest ruin and explore. So a quick correction before we do this action. When Vagabot had to damage an item because of the battle it engaged in with the Marquis, it now has fewer than 6 undamaged items. So this item should have come back off the battle track when that happened. Okay, there we go. And now the Vagabot is going to exhaust 2 items, 1 to move and 1 to explore. Vagabot moved from clearing 3 to clearing 11 and has explored this ruin to gain a new item. And now that it's gained a new item, now it has 6 undamaged items, so one of the exhausted items will go up into the battle track. So that's the end of Explore for the Vagabot. Now it's time to battle. Remember that Berserker is in play. So Vagabot, instead of targeting the player with the most victory points, Vagabot instead targets the player with the most pieces. And so in clearing 11, that will be the Marquis. So Vagabot battles the Marquis in clearing 11. So first we have to take care of Marksman. At the start of battle as attacker, deal an immediate hit, scoring a point if you remove an enemy warrior. So 1 cat is immediately removed and Vagabot scores a victory point. The roll is a 3-2. Obviously the cat can't do 2. It can only do a maximum of 1. So that comes down to 1. The Vagabot cannot do 3 hits right now. It is at max 2 hits. So that comes down to 2. Okay, so the cat is eliminated and the Vagabot has to damage 1 item. It will choose an exhausted item. Vagabot scores another victory point for removing a warrior, and so is now at 6 victory points. Now, usually, and also had to exhaust an item for that battle, by the way. Now, usually, Vagabot would continue to battle, exhausting 2 items, but we have Adventurer in play, so Vagabot can battle no more than once, and instead will do quests at the end of daylight, if possible. Okay, so that's the end of battle. We now move on to special. So the Vagabot exhausts an item to do its special ability, which is steal. Take a random card from the enemy in your clearing with the most points there. Well, there is an enemy in its clearing this time. There's a sympathy token there. So Vagabot will steal, quote unquote, a card from the Automated Alliance, but the Automated Alliance obviously doesn't have any cards, and so Vagabot simply scores a victory point instead. So the Vagabot is now up to 7 victory points, tied with the Alliance. That's the end of daylight for the Vagabot, and so Adventurer now kicks in. At the end of daylight, repeat quest as many times as possible. Well, the quest right now is a mouse, and Vagabot happens to be in a mouse clearing and happens to have exactly 2 unexhausted items in its satchel. So Vagabot will exhaust those 2 items to complete the quest and score a victory point. The new quest is also a mouse. Once again, I forgot to bring that item back down off the battle track. Vagabot is now down to 5 items once again in its satchel, so that item had to come back from the battle track. Okay, so that's the end of daylight. We're on to evening. There are some damaged items, so Vagabot here is going to refresh 4 undamaged items. And now, if you're in a forest, repair all items. If not, repair 1 item. Repair unexhausted items before exhausted items. Well, Vagabot is not in a forest, so it would repair 1 item. However, Berserker allows it to repair 1 more item. So, Vagabot will repair both of its items, and now it's above 6 once again, so 1 exhausted item goes back to the battle track. And that's the end of Vagabot's turn. Electric Iry's turn, and the order card is a bird again. The Iry is getting very lucky here. So nothing but birds so far. No craftable item this time, though, so we'll simply go into the decree. We now resolve the decree, beginning with recruit. So the Iry is going to recruit 4 warriors, and it's going to be a matching clearing with a roost. The Iry have 2 clearings with a roost, so they prioritize the clearing with the most enemy pieces, which will be 4 because there's a sympathy token there. So the Iry place 4 warriors into clearing 4. The next part of the decree is move. So they're going to choose to move from the clearing with the most Iry warriors. That will be clearing 4. They will leave behind 4 warriors because there are 4 cards in the bird column. And they'll move to the clearing with no roost, so not 12, either 9 or 8. And they want to prioritize the clearing with the fewest enemy pieces, so in this case that will be 8. So they will move all but 4 warriors, that is to say 3 warriors, from clearing 4 to clearing 8. The next part of the decree is battle. And there are 2 places where the Iry can battle, 4 and 8. And they prioritize a clearing with no roost. So that means they're going to battle in 8. So the Iry could battle either the Marquise or the Automated Alliance in this case. So it needs to determine which one to battle. Well, it prioritizes, first of all, whoever has the fewest number of buildings. And both of them have 0 buildings, so that doesn't help. So its next tiebreaker is the player with the most pieces there. Again, they're both tied in that regard. And so then it goes to the player with the most victory points. So that will be the Automated Alliance. So the Iry will battle the lone sympathy token in clearing 8. So the roll in this case is a 1-0. However, rolling when up against a defenseless sympathy token is kind of pointless because the outcome is always the same. So let me walk you through how it works out. The outcome is always the sympathy token gets removed and one warrior from the attacking side gets removed. But let me walk you through it. So first of all, because Veterans is in play, the Woodland Alliance, the Automated Alliance gets the Guerrilla Warfare ability, which means they always take the higher roll and the attacker takes the lower roll. Okay, so instead of usually the attacker would get the higher roll and the defender would get the lower roll, it goes the other way around when the Automated Alliance is the defender. So the roll of 0 goes to the Irie and the roll of 1 goes to the Automated Alliance. Okay. Informants is also in play. So defenseless sympathy tokens benefit from Automated Ambush. Okay, usually Automated Ambush only applies to Alliance warriors, but because of informants, it also applies to defenseless sympathy tokens. So that says, in battle as defender with any Alliance warriors, you deal an extra hit. Okay, so right now, if we look at this, the Automated Alliance doesn't have any warriors here, so the most hits they can do is 0. Okay, so we reduce that to 0. But because of informants, they get Automated Ambush, which means they deal an extra hit. So they do end up doing 1 hit. So if you think about it, no matter what the roll was here, even if it was 3, it would get reduced to 0 because there are no warriors. So you can't do more than 1 hit. And then Automated Ambush would move it back up to 1. So the Automated Alliance always gets 1, no matter what the roll is. Okay, on the other side, the Irie here, they rolled a 0. Nothing could be worse, right? Well, they're up against a defenseless token, though. And when any faction is up against a defenseless token, they do an extra hit. So they automatically do 1 hit. Right? So even if they roll 0, the worst they could possibly do, they still take 1 hit. They still do 1 hit. In this particular case, the Electric Irie actually do another one because this column that they're using right now has more cards than any other column. And so that's a part of battle. They get an extra hit. Doesn't matter. It won't do anything. Okay. So what happens is what always happens when a faction battles a defenseless sympathy token. That token is removed, and the attacker loses 1 warrior. Now, usually, removing a token would give the attacker a victory point. Not so in this case because the Automated Alliance has popularity in play. Enemies do not score victory points for removing sympathy tokens. So the Automated Alliance, the Electric Ivory do not get a victory point for removing that token. However, there's another trait to keep in mind, which is war tax. Whenever you remove an enemy building or token, its owner loses 1 victory point. So instead of the Irie getting a victory point, what happens is the Alliance loses 1 victory point. Okay, so that's the end of the Battle of Clearing 8. That's now the end of the decree, and we have to keep in mind Relentless. After resolving the decree, remove all defenseless buildings and tokens in any clearing with Irie warriors. So that means that the Automated Alliance loses another sympathy token from clearing 4. Again, the Irie do not get a victory point for removing it, but the Alliance loses a victory point instead. So now the Ivory will build. I'll put a roost in a clearing you roll with highest priority with no roost. So that will be clearing 8. Okay, we're now at the end of daylight. And so swoop comes into effect. At the end of daylight, place 2 warriors in the clearing of highest priority with no Ivory pieces. Well, the clearing of highest priority with no Ivory pieces is clearing 1. So they'll place 2 Ivory warriors there. Okay, that is the end of daylight for the Ivory. It's now evening, where they will score 2 victory points. That brings them up to 4 total victory points. And here's where we stand after the end of 2 rounds. The Vagabot is ahead at 8 victory points. The Alliance is at 5, and both the Irie and the Marquise are at 4. Okay, we're on to the next round. The Marquise draws a mouse card. It does not have a craftable item, so they move right along to daylight. and so they will battle in every mouse clearing. There are 2 mouse clearings where the Marquise can battle. Clearing 7 is one, it has a sympathy token in it, and clearing 9 is the other, which also has a sympathy token in it. And as I mentioned before, there's no need to roll in a case like this. No matter what the roll is, it'll turn out the same. The sympathy token will be removed, and 1 attacking warrior will be removed. Again, it doesn't matter what the roll is, that will be the outcome. And again, because popularity is in effect, enemies do not score victory points for removing sympathy tokens. So the Marquise does not score any victory points for removing these sympathy tokens. Okay, that's the end of battle. Recruit is next. So the Marquise puts 4 warriors in mouse clearings. The only mouse clearing they do not rule is clearing 11. So they place 1 warrior in the other mouse clearings. That's 9 and 7 and 2. And they had 1 extra warrior, and it goes in the higher priority. So they put an extra warrior into 2. Next up is build. Since the order card is a mouse, they built a recruiter, and it goes in the space with the most Marquise warriors, which right now is clearing 5. So they built a recruiter in clearing 5. Next is move, but there are no mouse clearings right now with more than 3 cat warriors, so there will be no movement. Blitz comes up next because it happens after movement. Find the clearing you rule of highest priority with no enemy pieces. Move all but 1 warrior from that clearing, then battle. And again, the way I interpret that is the movement, they select a space if they can that has an enemy they can actually battle. So the space with the highest priority, in this case, is 2. So they'll move all but 1 warrior out of space 2. And so the clearings that are adjacent that actually have some enemies is 6. So they'll move 2 warriors into 6, and then they'll battle there. Again, the battle always works out the same way. 1 sympathy token and 1 warrior removed. And again, because of popularity, the cats do not get a victory point for removing that sympathy token. Expand is next, but the Marquise did place a building, so that doesn't do anything. And so we move on to evening. So they will score on the mouse track this time, so they get 1 victory point. Okay, the Marquise is now up to 7 victory points, and that is the end of their turn. On to the Alliance. The Automated Alliance's turn now. Their order card is a mouse. It does not have a craftable item. So they move on to Revolt. And there is a mouse clearing with sympathy on the board. It is clearing 11, so they're going to revolt there. Because the Vagabot is in the space where the Automated Alliance is doing a revolt, we need to pay attention to this rule, full removal. Whenever an enemy player uses an effect that says it removes all pieces from a clearing, such as Alliance Revolt's Favor of the Mice cards, Conspiracy Bombs, with the Vagabond, he damages 3 items. Okay, so the Vagabond doesn't get removed. Instead, he has to damage 3 items. So the Vagabond has damaged 3 items, and that means the battle track is now back down once again to a max of 1 hit. And so the Alliance has placed a mouse base in clearing 11. Next up is Public Pity, but there was a revolt, so that is skipped, and instead we go to Spread Sympathy. For Spread Sympathy, the Alliance could choose either clearing 7, which is adjacent to a sympathetic clearing, or clearing 9, which is also adjacent to a sympathetic clearing. And those are the only mouse clearings that qualify. And they both have exactly 2 warriors, so that tiebreaker doesn't solve it. Therefore, they simply go with the higher priority. They'll place Sympathy in clearing 7. They score 1 victory point for that. So that's the end of Spread Sympathy. Next is Surprise Revolt, but that only happens with a bird card. And so we move on to Evening. Organize. Any clearing with a base and 3 or more warriors. There are none now, so that does nothing. So Recruit. Place a warrior in each clearing with a base. So that places a warrior in clearing 11 and in clearing 1. And now we discard the order card, but before we leave the automated alliance, we have to do Wildfire, which is they spread sympathy one more time, but do not score points for placing the token. So now they place sympathy in clearing 9. Okay, that's the end of the alliance's turn. On to the Vagabot. It is the Vagabot's turn, and the order card is a fox, which does have a craftable item, and so the Vagabot took that item and scored a victory point. The Vagabot will not slip into a forest. It has plenty of undamaged items, and so we'll follow daylight actions, beginning with Explore. So move to the nearest ruin and exhaust an item to take an item from the ruin. So the Vagabot moved from clearing 11 to clearing 12, had to exhaust an item to do that, and then explored the ruin in clearing 12, had to exhaust an item to do that, and picked up a new item. So now it has 6 items, and once again, a item moves to the battle track. Okay, that's the end of Explore. We now move to Battle. And because the Vagabot is in a clearing with enemies, the Vagabot is going to battle the Eyrie in clearing 12. Because it has Marksman in play, the first thing it will do is strike an immediate hit on the Eyrie and score a victory point for that. Okay, now it's time to roll for the battle. The roll is a 3-2. The Eyrie can do 2 hits because they have more warriors than that. But the Vagabot can only do 2 hits max right now because it's battle track. So that will be reduced to 2. Okay, so the Eyrie lose 2 warriors and the Vagabot has to damage 2 items. Okay, that's the end of the battle. I forgot to mention, Vagabot gets 2 victory points for removing 2 warriors. And once again, that item comes off the battle track because there are fewer than 6 undamaged items. All right, and once again, because of Adventurer, Vagabot can only battle once. So it moves on from battle to special. And that means it will try to steal a card from an enemy in its clearing. That's the Eyrie, but the Eyrie doesn't have any cards, so Vagabot simply gets another victory point for that. Okay, that's the end of daylight actions. And now, because of Adventurer, Vagabot will repeat quest as many times as possible. The current quest is a mouse, and that gives the Vagabot 3 choices. Clearing 9, clearing 11, and clearing 7 are all mouse clearings. And so Vagabot will just choose the highest priority, which will be clearing 7, and Vagabot will do the quest there. So Vagabot scores a victory point for that, and now is at 14 victory points, way ahead of everybody else. However, has a lot of damaged items at this point. Okay, so Vagabot had to exhaust 3 items, 1 to move and 2 to do the quest, in order to do the quest. The new quest card is another mouse, and now we are at evening time. If you have any damaged items, refresh 4 undamaged items. Well, of course, there are some damaged items, so 4 undamaged items will be refreshed. Okay, and now we move on to repair. If you're in a forest, repair all items. If not, repair 1 item and unexhausted before exhausted. Okay, so Vagabot will repair that 1 item, and because of Berserker, gets to repair 1 more item. And now that brings Vagabot back up to 6, and so 1 item goes up onto the battle track once again. Okay, that is the end of Vagabot's turn. It's the Electric Eyrie's turn once again. What do you reckon? Will they be lucky enough to draw another bird card? Could it be? No. They drew a fox this time. But the fox does have a craftable item, so they crafted that and got a victory point. Okay, so now the fox card will go into the decree. So now it's time to resolve the decree. Now we have two columns to deal with for each action. So we begin by recruiting in a fox clearing first, and it has to be a fox clearing with a roost. Well, there are two fox clearings with a roost, 8 and 12, and so the Ivory prioritized the clearing with enemy pieces. So they're going to put one warrior into clearing 8. Now they're going to recruit with the bird column, which has 4 cards. And now they can choose any clearing with a roost. So that is 4, 8, and 12. Those are the 3 clearings with roosts. And once again, they prioritize a clearing that has enemy pieces. So once again, they choose 8. This time they put 4 warriors in clearing 8. Now the Ivory are going to move. And they're starting again with the fox column. So they want to move from a fox clearing with the most Ivory warriors. Clearly that's 8, once again. There are 3 fox clearings with warriors up there. 1 has 2 warriors, 12 has 2 warriors, and 8 has 7. So they're going to move from 8. And they have to leave behind either enough to control the clearing or 1, which is the number of cards in this column. And 1 warrior is enough to control the clearing. So they'll leave behind 1. They're going to move 6 warriors out of clearing 8. Okay, they want to move to a clearing with no roost. Okay, so they're not going to go that way. So the only other way to go is that way. So they're going to move 6 warriors into clearing 6. Into clearing 7 from clearing 8. Now they're going to move using the bird column. And so they move from a matching clearing they rule with the most Ivory warriors. Since it's the bird column, every clearing is a matching clearing. So whatever clearing has the most Ivory warriors that they rule. Obviously that's 7. They have the most warriors there and they rule it. So they're going to leave enough behind to rule the clearing or 4, whichever one is higher. So in this case, they will leave. Oh, and they're lords of the forest, so they rule on ties. So they have to leave behind 4 then. That's enough to rule. So they'll leave behind 4. They'll move 2, and they're going to move to an adjacent clearing with no roost. Okay, well that one has a roost, and that one has a roost. So the only way to go is down to 3. So they will move 2 warriors from clearing 7 to clearing 3. The Ivory are now going to battle, again starting with the fox column. So they want to battle in a fox clearing, and there are 2 choices. There's clearing 1, they could battle the alliance up there, or there's clearing 8, they could battle this lone cat down here. Well, the clearing tiebreaker is that they choose a clearing with no roost. Well, there is a roost in clearing 8, and there isn't in clearing 1. So they're going to battle the alliance in clearing 1. Not a good result for the Ivory. Remember that in battle, the alliance gets the higher roll because of veterans. So the alliance rolls a 2, and the Ivory roll is 0. Also keep in mind that the Ivory do automated ambush, the alliance does automated ambush. They deal an extra hit. So this actually goes up to 3. Okay, so the Ivory lose both of their warriors, and the alliance is unscathed. The Ivory are still doing battle. They just did the fox battle. Now they're in the bird column. And so they're going to battle in a matching clearing because this is birds. It's a wild suit. All clearings match. And so all these clearings down here, they have warriors where they could battle. They don't want to battle in a space with a roost, however, so it's going to be between 7 and 3. And the tiebreaker in this case is they go with the clearing with the most defenseless buildings. Well, there are no buildings in either of those clearings, so then they go with the lowest priority. Okay, so that means it's going to be clearing 7. Well, everybody's there in clearing 7. It's a meeting of the factions. And so they have to choose which of those factions to fight. They would normally choose the player with the most buildings, but they all have 0 buildings, so that doesn't do it. And so defender ties, they battle the player with the most pieces. So in this case, that's the cats, who have 2 warriors there. All right, so the Ivory will battle the Marquise in clearing 7. The roll is a 3-2. And the Ivory get an extra hit because they're dealing with the column in their decree that has the most cards. So technically they're doing 4 hits here. In any case, that's enough to remove both of the cats. And the Ivory have to take 2 hits in return. Okay, because of hospitals, the Marquis get to move those 2 warriors to the clearing with the keep. So they don't actually lose these warriors, they simply move over there. Okay, that's the end of the Battle of Clearing 7. Okay, that's the end of the decree. And now Relentless comes into play. After resolving the decree, remove all defenseless buildings and tokens in any clearing with Ivory warriors. Okay, well that means this sympathy token goes, and this sympathy token goes. Okay. Remember, the Ivory don't score, no faction scores when removing sympathy tokens because of popularity. However, because of war tax, the alliance loses 2 victory points. Okay, well, we managed to make it through 2 rounds this video. And I'm going to end the video here. This is where the victory points stand now. The Vagabot seems to be running away with it. It's at 14 victory points. The other factions are bunched up down here around 5 victory points. So what do you think? Is the Vagabond just going to run away with this game and win it? Or will the other factions find a way to rein that bot in? Okay, well, this is the state of the board right now. And let me know in the comments who you think is going to win. Will it be the Vagabot, or will some other faction manage to pull it out? Let me know. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.